The year is 1948, the Bronx. A baby boy is born. His name? Frank Abagnale Jr. This child was destined for a life far from ordinary. Frank's story is spun from lies, forged in deception. From an early age, Frank possessed a charm that could disarm anyone. Beneath this charm lay a scheming mind. The world was a game, and he was determined to win. This is the story of Frank Abagnale Jr., the real-life Catch Me If You Can. Frank's journey into the world of deception began small, almost innocuous. A forged signature on a school report card, a cleverly worded lie to a shopkeeper. But these petty deceptions were just the tip of the iceberg. Frank was a quick study, his mind absorbing information like a sponge. He possessed an uncanny ability to spot vulnerabilities, to exploit the loopholes in the system. His first major con was a sign of things to come. At the tender age of 16, he impersonated a substitute teacher. For weeks, he commanded the classroom, his youthful appearance somehow adding to his air of authority. He even graded papers, his own mischievous touch evident in the inflated marks. This early success emboldened him, fueling his desire for bigger, more daring cons. The world, it seemed, was his oyster, and Frank Abagnale Jr. was hungry for more. He craved the thrill of the con, the adrenaline rush of pulling off the impossible. He wanted to live life on his own terms, consequences be damned. And so he set his sights on a target that embodied both glamour and freedom, the airline industry. The story of Frank Abagnale Jr. is a cautionary tale, but it's also a testament to the power of human ingenuity. What drove Frank Abagnale Jr.? Was it greed, a thirst for power, or was it something more complex? Perhaps it was the thrill of the chase, the intoxicating feeling of outsmarting everyone around him. Maybe it was the desire to reinvent himself, to escape the confines of his own identity. Whatever the reason, Frank was undeniably drawn to the world of deception. He reveled in the challenge of assuming different personas, of becoming someone else entirely. He meticulously researched his roles, studying mannerisms, perfecting accents, all in pursuit of the perfect illusion. But Frank's cons were more than just elaborate performances. They were a testament to his keen understanding of human nature. He knew how to exploit people's trust, their willingness to believe in the facade he presented. He understood the power of a uniform, the authority it conveyed, and he used it to his advantage. Frank Abagnale Jr.'s story forces us to confront our own vulnerabilities, our own susceptibility to deception. It's a reminder that things are not always as they seem, and that even the most convincing facade can hide a darker truth. Frank Abagnale Jr. lived a life most people wouldn't dare to imagine. He flew millions of miles as a Pan Am pilot, all without ever attending flight school. He worked as a pediatrician in a busy hospital, his lack of medical training masked by his confidence and charm. He even passed the bar exam and practiced law, his legal expertise entirely self-taught. His life was a whirlwind of assumed identities, forged checks, and close calls. He was always on the move, forever looking over his shoulder, knowing that the law was closing in. Yet he seemed to relish the danger, the constant game of cat and mouse he played with the authorities. His exploits made headlines, turning him into a folk hero of sorts. People were captivated by his audacity, his ability to outwit even the most seasoned professionals. He became a symbol of rebellion, a testament to the idea that you could get away with anything if you were clever enough. But Frank's story is more than just a thrilling tale of deception. It's a story about identity, about the choices we make and the consequences that follow. It's a story that asks us to question our own perceptions, to look beyond the surface and confront the complexities of human nature. Picture this, the Bronx, the 1950s. Frank Abagnale Jr., a bright kid with a mop of dark hair, grows up in the shadow of the city that never sleeps. His old man, Frank Sr., owns a stationery store, always hustling, always trying to make a buck. His mom, Paulette, a French war bride, brings European elegance to their Bronx apartment. Young Frankie idolizes her. Life ain't always easy for the Abagnales. Money's tight, tensions run high. Frank Sr. has an entrepreneurial spirit, but things don't always pan out. He's always chasing that next big deal. But amidst the struggles, there are moments of joy. Frank Jr., He's a charmer, even as a kid. He's got this knack for getting what he wants. Quick-witted, always a step ahead, sees the angles, but there's a shadow lurking beneath the surface. Young Frank, he's starting to understand that things ain't always what they seem. He's learning that the world can be a tough place. Frank Sr. sees potential in his boy. He wants him to have a better life. He instills in Frank Jr. the importance of hard work. But there's another lesson Frank Jr. is absorbing about the allure of shortcuts. School, it's a breeze for Frank. He's got a mind like a steel trap, but he's bored, restless. He starts cutting corners, pulling little pranks, testing the boundaries. Frank's old man takes him to work. Learn the value of a hard day's work, he says. But Frank's eyes are drawn to the cash register, to the flow of money. He starts pocketing small change, just a few cents here and there. As Frank gets older, his cons get bolder. He figures out how to work the system. He starts writing bad checks, hooked on the adrenaline rush. He's on a path far from the Bronx, paved with lies and deception. Things at home, they take a turn. Frank Sr. and Paulette, their marriage, it starts to crumble. The constant pressure, the financial strain, it takes its toll. They try to hide it from Frank Jr., but he sees it. He hears the arguments, feels the tension hanging heavy in the air. The foundation of his world, it's cracking. One day, the inevitable happens. Frank Sr. and Paulette, they decide to call it quits. It's a messy divorce, filled with bitterness and resentment. Frank Jr., he's caught in the middle. He's just a teenager, but he's forced to grow up fast. The court orders him to choose, his mother or his father. The weight of that choice, it crushes him. He loves them both, but he can't choose. He feels lost, abandoned. The world, it seems, is falling apart around him. And in that moment of despair, something inside Frank Jr. snaps. He decides to run. He packs a bag, throws in a few clothes, and walks out the door. He leaves behind the broken pieces of his family, the shattered remnants of his childhood. He steps out into the world alone, adrift, searching for something, anything, to fill the void within him. And that's when his life takes a truly dramatic turn. Section 4. The lure of the grift, a descent into con artistry. Out on his own, Frank needs to survive. He picks up odd jobs, but nothing sticks. He drifts from place to place, a ghost in his own life. It's during this time that he discovers his true talent, his knack for deception. He starts small, passing bad checks, but he quickly realizes the potential of his gift. He studies people, their mannerisms, their vulnerabilities. He learns how to adapt, how to become whoever he needs to be to get what he wants. He hones his skills, becoming a master of disguise, a chameleon blending seamlessly into any environment. The thrill of the con becomes addictive. Every successful deception is a victory, a validation of his intelligence and cunning. He's no longer just surviving, he's thriving. He's living a life most people wouldn't dare to dream of, a life of excitement, luxury, and endless possibilities. But with each con, the stakes get higher. The lines between right and wrong blur. Frank's pursuit of the ultimate con leads him down a dangerous path, a path that will bring him face to face with the law, with the very people determined to bring his world crashing down. Section 1. Taking flight. The audacity of a fake pilot. Now Frank, he's got this thing for uniforms. They represent authority, respectability, a passport to a world he craves. And what uniform commands more respect than a pilot's, right? Those wings, they ain't just sewn on fabric. They're a symbol of freedom, adventure, something bigger than himself. He sets his sights on Pan Am, the king of the skies back then. He studies their every move, learns the lingo, the procedures, the whole 9 yards. He even manages to get his hands on a discarded Pan Am pilot's uniform. A little tailoring, a forged ID, and bam, Frank Abagnale Jr. transforms into Frank Williams, seasoned aviator. His first flight, you wouldn't believe it. He cons his way onto a deadhead flight. That's when pilots fly for free to get to another assignment. He sits in the cockpit, soaking it all in, the instruments, the jargon, the sheer thrill of it. He even convinces the real pilots to let him take the helm for a bit. Just a little joyride, you know? The thing about Frank, he's a natural. He's got this aura of confidence, this way of carrying himself that disarms suspicion. People, they want to believe in the fantasy he's created. And so, Frank the fake pilot, he's cleared for takeoff. Section 2, soaring high, living the dream, the perks of the con. Now, being a pilot, it ain't just about flying planes, right? It's about the lifestyle, the perks, the whole shebang. Frank, he dives headfirst into that world. Free flights? Check. Staying in swanky hotels? You got it. He's living the high life, a jet-setting playboy, all on Pan Am's dime. He travels the globe, from Paris to Rome to Tokyo, experiencing things most kids his age could only dream of. He rubs shoulders with celebrities, attends high society parties, the whole 9 yards. He's got it all, the money, the women, the admiration. For a while, it seems like the party will never end. But there's always this underlying tension, this knowledge that it's all built on a lie. Frank, he can't let his guard down, not for a second. He's got to be on all the time, maintaining this facade, this carefully constructed persona. It's exhilarating, sure, but it's also exhausting. He starts to feel like a character in a movie, playing a role, never truly living. The things that matter, real relationships, genuine connections, they remain elusive. Frank, he's got the world at his feet, but deep down he knows it's all an illusion. Section 3. Landing in hot water, close calls and narrow escapes. You can't pull off a con of this magnitude without a few close calls. Frank's got the FBI on his tail, and these guys, they ain't messing around. One time he's about to board a flight, sees 2 guys in suits by the gate. He keeps his cool, slips out a window, and disappears into the city streets. Another time, he's in a fancy hotel, using a fake name. A maid recognizes him, but he charms his way out, slips her cash, and hightails it out. The guy's got 9 lives, I swear. Section 4. Beyond the cockpit. From doctor to lawyer, the transformations continue. Frank's restless spirit drives him to new challenges, new identities. He becomes Dr. Frank Connors, faking credentials to land a hospital gig. He even delivers a baby. But medicine isn't his thing, so he studies for 2 weeks and passes the Louisiana bar exam. He becomes a prosecutor, even catching the eye of the Attorney General. Frank Abagnale Jr., the ultimate imposter advising top law enforcement. Talk about audacious. Section 5. A world of illusions, the high life and the looming shadow of truth. Frank's living the dream, money, women, fame. He travels the world, stays in the finest hotels, dines in exclusive restaurants. But behind the charm, there's a darkness. He's living a lie, constantly looking over his shoulder. He tries to drown out the guilt with more cons, but he can't escape himself. The walls are closing in, and Frank is about to learn that even the most elaborate cons eventually end. The net is tightening. The feds turn up the heat. Carl Hanratty enters the game. The FBI isn't thrilled about Frank mocking their system. They assign Carl Hanratty, a relentless agent, to the case. Hanratty studies Frank's every move, but Frank is always one step ahead. Hanratty starts connecting the dots, realizing Frank is no ordinary crook. The chase becomes personal, a high-stakes battle of wits. Frank taunts Hanratty, daring him to catch him. He knows Hanratty is closing in, but can't resist the thrill. A transatlantic chase from country to country, always one step ahead. Frank takes his show on the road, a global tour of deception. He hops from country to country, leaving a trail of bad checks and broken hearts. Hanratty chases Frank's ghost across continents, piecing together the puzzle. Frank is a phantom, a master of illusion. But Hanratty never gives up, waiting for Frank to make a mistake. Frank's getting sloppy, too confident. Hanratty is ready for that one wrong move. Legends and rumors, Frank Abagnale Jr. becomes a folk hero. Frank's exploits become legendary, painting him as a modern-day Robin Hood. He becomes a folk hero, a symbol of rebellion. People are captivated by his audacity and glamorous double life. Rumors swirl, mythologizing Frank into something larger than life. He's a phantom, a name whispered with awe and apprehension. The more elusive he becomes, the more his legend grows. Frank is everywhere and nowhere. Section 4. the walls close in, the inevitability of truth. Even the most elaborate cons must end. The constant pressure and loneliness wear Frank down. He misses his family and the simple things. He sees the hurt in his mother's eyes and the disappointment in his father's face. The walls are closing in and Hanratty is getting closer. Frank realizes there's no escaping the truth. He longs for a different life, but is it too late? Section 1. Cornered in Montpellier, the jig is up. Montpellier, France. Frank thinks he's found a safe haven, but Hanratty has been tracking him for months. One day, Frank sees a familiar face, an airline stewardess he once charmed. She recognizes him and the jig is up. Frank tries to run, but it's too late. French police, alerted by Hanratty, swoop in. He's outnumbered and outmaneuvered. The game is over. As they cuff him, Hanratty emerges from the crowd, satisfied. Frank's world comes crashing down. Section 2, French justice, American prisoner, extradition and imprisonment. Frank faces French justice and is extradited to the States. He's facing serious time behind bars. The reality hits him hard. No more high life, just prison. He bounces from one penitentiary to another, learning to navigate prison life. He's stripped of his freedom and identity. The isolation is deafening, with only his thoughts for company. He reflects on his past mistakes and the people he's hurt. Even in the darkest places, hope can flicker. Frank is summoned to the warden's office and meets Hanratty. Hanratty offers a deal work with the FBI to shorten his sentence. The FBI needs Frank's unique skills to catch other criminals. It's a risky proposition, but a glimmer of hope for Frank. He can use his talents for good and atone for his past sins. Frank agrees, seeing a chance for redemption. He begins a new chapter, working with the FBI. Frank doesn't trust easily, but he knows a good deal. He cooperates with the FBI, using his knowledge for good. He helps crack cases and lectures on security measures. His story becomes a Hollywood legend. Behind the fame, Frank never forgets his past. He dedicates his life to fighting fraud and making amends. He becomes a husband, a father, and finds peace. Frank's second chance is a success story for the ages. Prison can break a man or make him. Frank chooses the latter, determined to turn his life around. He enrolls in programs, gets his GED, and takes courses. He discovers a talent for printing, channeling his energy constructively. Word of Frank's transformation reaches the FBI. They need his unique skills to catch criminals. Frank becomes a consultant, sharing his expertise. He travels the country, lecturing on security and redemption. Frank Abagnale Jr.'s story is a cautionary tale about trust. His cons exposed weaknesses in security and trust. He forced law enforcement to adapt to a new breed of criminal. His legacy is in the security measures we now take for granted. Frank inadvertently sparked a revolution in security, but the most important lesson is that of redemption. He proved it's never too late to change and atone for past wrongs. Frank's life is a testament to the power of second chances. Frank Abagnale Jr.'s story captured the public imagination. He became a legend, his life a source of endless fascination. Books were written, movies were made, his exploits immortalized in popular culture. But behind the myth, the legend, the Hollywood portrayals, lies a complex and contradictory figure. He was a brilliant con man, there's no denying that. But he was also a product of his time, a young man adrift in a world on the cusp of change, seeking connection, validation, and a sense of belonging in all the wrong places. He craved the thrill of the con, the adrenaline rush of outsmarting the system, but beneath the surface he yearned for something more, something authentic, something real. Frank Abagnale Jr., the man who once lived 1,000 lives, ultimately found his true calling in helping others avoid the mistakes he made. He dedicated his life to righting his wrongs, to using his unique skills to make the world a little bit safer, a little bit more honest. His story is a powerful reminder that redemption is possible, even for those who have strayed far from the path.